viewers, and welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. Since the Parkland High School shootings on Valentine's Day, teenagers have been leading the effort to try to end gun violence and to change the nation's gun laws. Shirley Brandman is here to discuss the possible reasons for this new approach and why it seems to be working, at least so far. Two major organizations supporting libraries throughout Montgomery County, Friends of the Library of Montgomery County, and Montgomery County's Government Library Board have joined forces to work together in support of our public libraries. Tom Thomson, chair of the Friends of the Library of Montgomery County, is here to explain why there is strength in numbers. Sexually transmitted infections continue to be an issue among young people in our community. A program to counter STDs and STIs is now available. It's been available in Montgomery County. It's more important now as these numbers spike. José Luis Diaz from CCI Health and Wellness Services is here to tell us about what is going on in this very, very serious issue. It is important that we find out how we can care better for the hardest working muscle in our bodies. Of course, that's our heart. Henry Hailstock is here with some suggestions on what we should be doing to promote heart healthiness. Shirley, welcome.
Thanks, Don.
Boy, tragedy in Parkland and what that has resulted in an eruption of civic engagement across the country, especially young people.
These young people are turning their grief into powerful activism, and kudos to them, because I think they are really helping to spark a conversation, and by all indications, they're not going to let it go quickly. As well, they shouldn't, so that we build on this momentum.
Well, we think about young people through time. I mean, and a lot of times it was, within Vietnam,
absolutely,
and then and looking at civil rights, and then more like, Black Lives Matter,
yes,
and DACA. But there's something different about this. What is
so, I think that's very important for us to understand in a historic context that we often have had students leading the way. I think what feels different about this is, number one, there's just the pain of these young people speaking their own truths, right? So these are high school students. So sometimes the tragedies have been younger students who families have spoken for them, but now we're hearing from the young people directly. They're also the masters of the tools of the young generation.
Right.
They put it out on Twitter. They had 81,000 followers immediately.
Right.
They're crowdsourcing the funding for the political activism. They are reaching out to communities all across the country over social media, so they are taking advantage of the tools they have.
Right.
And I think some of the power is their authentic voices, right? It is resonating with us when they say that the adults haven't gotten it done. I mean, think about it. These are young people growing up post-Columbine.
Right.
They have never lived in a time when they didn't know that there were school shootings.
So we're looking at it, and I know there are a lot of questions and comments, but we're, school shooting and guns. Certainly the Second Amendment, the NRA has been pushing and promoting,
right,
and any little bit of an approach made by anyone that limits the ability of an individual to carry any gun, whether it's a flamethrower, a bazooka.
And these young people are so smart because they are not attacking the Second Amendment, but they are saying that we have to have our kids safe in school, and they are making it really clear. They are saying to adults, look me in the eye and say, what is it that you are going to do to make us feel safe in school? This isn't about taking people's guns away. This is about reasonable...
There's too many of these youth today, believe it or not, that have been touched personally by someone who has in their family or their friends or a friend of a friend that has been
gunned down,
wounded.
This is also a generation that doesn't have the background that we have with the whole issue over the years and the political issues that we all know.
But they are savvy that it takes pressure and it takes raised voices that are not going to go away.
And they're being listened to very clearly because they're going to be voting.
Absolutely.
In the next election. And so these are the next wave of leaders that are going to set the tone for who's going to be at the helm of the nation.
I'm glad that they're bringing that out. In every march, they're bringing that out, that we are going to be voting, and if you don't come with us, we'll vote you away.
And really recognizing that the power of voters to have their voices as a very strong counterbalance to the influence the NRA has had is critical. And really calling out adults to stand up, really having powerful, very clear and real efforts, and politely, but not backing down. They get that that what they need to say to elected officials.
They're forcing us as adults to really come, to question our own thoughts and beliefs about this issue.
And they're articulating it very well. Very well.
I don't know about the questioning, Tom. And let me ask you this: I think the disquiet that most Americans have about the gun issue. I can't speak for you all. I can't speak for the majority of Americans, but I got to think that most of us would like to live in a society free of the threat of handguns, free of the threat of being held up at gunpoint.
Absolutely.
And we've been so cowed by the NRA, so cowed by Supreme Court decisions and others that these kids are, I think, for me, it's the catalyst. Certainly, it's the kids, but it's a spark that says, "Hell yeah!
Right.
Time to get in there because this is, why have we been walked over?"
Absolutely. Well, I think their voices are really powerful because their personal story is about what happens in a school building. What is it like to be a student and to worry? And we've had this in Maryland now too. It is happening all over. Right. So I think they're very powerful to raise that. And from that, the step to the larger question about, have we had enough? Do we realize as a society that gun violence is just a crisis, and there's really finally a time to do something about this?
I'm so impressed with the movement.
I am too.
A little bit less than a minute left.
I think what's really important, though, is that they are reaching out to elected officials and saying act. But part of what we should recognize is that our young people's faith in democracy depends on there being some results. Because they are not about just talking about this. Right. Their whole point is very correctly to us, we've done enough talking. Now it's a time to really act. And I hope that there's going to be a lot of action.
You marching this weekend?
I am in New York.
All right. And expect lots of marchers around the country?
I think so. I think people have been inspired and they recognize we all share a responsibility.
Amen. Thanks, Shirley.
Thank you.
Responsibility to go up against guns and young people, responsibility to ensure that our source of knowledge and all the wonderful things that libraries play in our community.
Absolutely.
That they stay active. Tom, thank you very much for coming back.
Pleasure to be here.
Tell us about the situation right now with libraries here and this wonderful work that you all are doing in conjunction with the library board, Friends of the Library.
Well, they're one of our great partners. We work with a number of organizations throughout the community to advance services for libraries and education and learning and the love of literature and so forth. But one of the things we do, for example, with the Montgomery County Library Board, which is a board whose members are appointed by the county executive, and they are the ones who advise the public libraries on issues. The Friends, our work is to raise money on behalf of the libraries and raise community awareness.
Right.
We partner together to communicate to public officials to support the libraries during the budget cycle and also off the budget cycle on issues of importance. So they are one of many organizations we work with in the community to do just that.
How are we looking? How are the libraries looking right now in the budget? Because it's always a budget issue.
Well, I think you all have read yourself what's going on with the budget and the state of it and so forth. The public libraries are doing, as far as from my vantage point, are doing a great job in terms of meeting their mission and serving the public with the book collections and everything else that they offer and programs and things that we help to support from the Friends of the Library in Montgomery County. We're very excited about many of the things that are coming up, such as the Big Read, which we're partnering with Montgomery Community Media, among many others, that's coming up starting this month and I think through June. We're doing a lot of work with other organizations like the F. Scott Fitzgerald Literary Festival, which is coming up, number of things like that going forward.
What I like, I can't speak for all the libraries, but in my community, Albany, I notice how they're having different programs to reach out to the community, whether it's English as a second language or you like to learn a second language, putting on reading programs for the youth. It's just different things that I see there, and I'm very impressed with that. And I like the way they upgraded the Albany Library too. It's more attractive, and really, for supposedly a small library, is really large.
Oh, it's great. We have a Friends of the Library chapter there, and they are really the heart and soul of a lot of what the programs are, and they work directly with the branch library manager to make these programs happen. It's really a great
And some of these libraries have become community centers. This is where the community gets together, deals with topics, with issues. They use not only the space, but the resources and the programming is really amazing. I live in Tacoma Park, and the closest one is the Silver Spring Library, and I am every other Saturday with my niece because there's always something exciting happening.
Fantastic.
So
That's
Tom,
great.
what are the biggest challenges that you face in terms of getting people's awareness raised?
Well, in some respects, it's easier than you think, particularly with younger families that are coming into that live here and are coming into the county itself because they have children. And many of them will go to the public libraries because of the children's program. So in some respects, it's a great place to be able to recruit new patrons of the libraries as well as members of the Friends of the Library as well. I think the biggest challenge comes with people like my daughter, who's 17. She goes off to college. And then she has a different world. Will she become a patron of her local library at that point in time of her life, or will it come later on when she becomes a mother and has a family? I think that's one of the big challenges.
I think to piggyback on what you just said, I think the biggest challenge that I see with libraries is because of the internet, because of the electronic era. More and more now, where we used to go to the library to get the information for our reports, now we can just go up on the internet to do that.
Although, frankly, with the digital divide, some communities really rely on their libraries to give access to young people to their computers and to the internet.
Some of them, but just to realize that you can go to the library and get these books to go into it, I think you can get a little more than what you would get.
And you can actually get the same books online now through the Montgomery Library system.
Sure.
So it's the same thing. It's like you don't actually have to physically go get the books. They're already available online.
One of the things I think is helpful in terms of what libraries stand for and what they're trying to achieve would be is in looking at some of the younger people. My daughter and her peer group, 17-year-olds.
A little less than a minute.
Do they like to use electronic forms of media or paper? They go primarily for paper. For a lot of different reasons. So it says to me that the future of books is still long-lived.
Yeah, and also in terms of the wealth in the community growing, and so buying a book. Why do I want to go to the library and borrow a book when I can buy a book?
Right.
And like, wait a minute here. It's certainly buy books if you're building a library, and you want to have resources, references. But if you're going to read a book, back, share it.
Exactly.
We're looking. You're feeling good about how things are going right now.
I am.
Good.
I think the future is looking very good for libraries.
Well, as we know, the library system helps us, makes this county go, and thanks
as we
to
say,
you.
Libraries matter.
Yes.
Libraries matter. Libraries matter for the brain matter and all other matter. Thank you very much. We'll be right back after this break. And we're back. José Luis, welcome back. It's been a while.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy
We've
to
had
be
a number of
back.
people from CCI Health and Wellness. They've all done great work. Please I'll give them raises when you get back.
I'll start with me.
But it's charming when you're here. So, troubling what we talked about earlier, and these sexually transmitted infections. We used to call them sexually transmitted diseases.
That's right. And part of the challenge is that the young people are not coming in to get tested. So one of the reasons we changed the acronym to infections, sexually transmitted infections, is to help folks get that stigma out of the way. It's not a disease yet. It's just an infection. We can treat it.
We can treat the infection just like you would with any kind of infected wound
Absolutely.
or whatever, right?
And some of the infections are treatable and curable. Some are not.
Right.
But the idea is to get folks to come into the door and get tested.
So why do you think young people aren't coming in now?
I think there is a couple of things that kind of come into play. We have this young invincible mentality. It's not going to happen
How
to
is
me.
that? Whoa! How is that different now than it's been from the beginning of time?
It's not. But we talked about earlier how knowledge is at people's fingertips.
Right.
People have access to information from everywhere in a matter of seconds, and there's a lot of misinformation or misinterpreting information. So we want folks to come into the health centers so we can help them, we can give them the tools, the knowledge so they can make informed decisions about their activities and their behaviors. We're not going to stop it. You know, we're human beings. It's
What are some of the programs now that you're reaching out to the age group that you were talking about?
So thanks to Title X, which is a federal...
Title X of what?
Title X is a federal law that was enacted back in the 70s that provides for folks who are uninsured or low income to have access to family planning, education, and other wellness services. And so all of the health centers throughout the community have these programs that allow these young people to come in, get tested, get treated, often for free or at a very reduced price.
And how do you reach out? How do young people know?
So we go to the schools when we are invited. We talk to the middle school kids. We talk to high schoolers. We go into the community. We do outreach events. Currently there is a program that remember when we say no means no. Now we have a saying yes means test. Come and get tested. It's the only way you can know if you are putting somebody at risk.
You mentioned before that the language that's being used has an impact on young people's perception of sexually transmitted infections as well as getting treatment for.
It does. And so one of the things that we also are trying to do is we followed the medical model for a long time and explaining things in a very specific medical way. We're now trying to use the language of the youth. We're trying to talk about these are the things you can still have fun, but here's how you can do it in a way that you are not going to be in danger or you're not going to put somebody else in danger. We're trying to. It's always been the issue, right? We come from a very Puritan background, 400 years ago, and we still have those difficulties talking openly about sexuality.
Sure.
And so we're trying to reduce that. We're trying to just make it like normal. And it's one of the things that we need to help young people understand, and parents. We also talk to a lot of parents so they can start. There are very specific curriculums where you start talking about sexuality at a very early age.
Which is very much of a Scandinavian model, and their prevalence is down. Real quick, before we got about a little over a minute left. And what is the magnitude of the issues right now? You talked about how it's spiked. What's going on?
So we don't know the reason why. We know the numbers. That 1 of 2 young people will get
40 seconds left.
an STI by the time they get 25.
1 of how many?
1 out of 2.
1 out of 2.
Wow.
So that's currently 50 million young people in the U.S.
Wow.
And that's a big number. And only half of those people are between the ages of 13 and 24. And of those, only 12% get tested. So testing is our way to get folks on the right track.
And I take it you probably are not excited about the culture wars going on right now. We've got the vice president, for instance, currently, who thinks that talking about sex in any kind of program like this is against God. Is this?
Luckily, we have a very engaged young population right now that is willing to stand up and talk about their needs and be heard, and so we're going to take advantage of that.
We need to have you come back.
Please do.
Others. We've got to keep talking about this issue.
Thank you.
Thanks, José Luis. Henry Hailstock, one
Yes.
health issue to another. We're talking about wellness of our heart here.
Yes, and I think people overlook the fact that this is the hardest working muscle in your body and very important. And obviously, some people are going to have congenital problems, but to look at it wholly, people think that, okay, I know one of the colleagues that we just talked to in the lunch area was saying, well, intense and short is great. Not necessarily. It could put too much strain on the heart itself.
But what your message is basically you need to be exercising, you need to be watching what you eat, don't smoke. I mean, their heart, you got to be making sure that you're looking after your heart and what you do on a daily basis.
We've been talking about, don't smoke, eat right, okay, live right, and all that stuff. But we forget one thing: we need to do the proper cardio. Take me for instance. I do weight training, okay, and sometimes I forget I got to do cardio. Thank God I have a son who's a fitness trainer that keeps reminding me cardio is very important.
And so what are the guidelines? Any idea?
At least 30 minutes.
30
I
minutes?
tell everyone, if
30
you
minutes
read it,
a day, a week?
at least 5 times a week.
Henry,
At
what do
least.
you advise people when they say, I don't have time for this, I can't work this in? Do you give them any advice on how they can structure their schedules and so forth?
My thing is making time, okay? And it's easy to make time in doing it. Now, for me, for instance, I'm a little overboard because right now I'm training for track and field, okay? Only because I wanted to try to stay in shape because I have a bad habit of eating a lot. So, I find time to do it.
Yeah.
When I'm watching TV, I get on a stationary bike and pump. Okay.
But this is also just the advice of being more active intentionally, right? Because you can do this by walking. You don't have to go to the gym. You don't have to have equipment. You just need
Exactly.
to be.
And that's what we say to our patients often. You don't have to join a gym.
No.
Just
No.
walk a little bit more, take the stairs once in a while, park in the last parking spot. And
You're talking about lifestyle.
It's
sort of and gradually. You're talking. Then that's how you can fit it in, right?
Exactly.
Just by doing these small little things.
I got a habit of, since I got a dumb dog, I had to walk it every day. So what I do in the morning.
If you had a smart dog, it would walk you. I mean, what's the...
Yeah, actually, you're right. I had a golden retriever that really used to literally walk me, but now I got a miniature schnauzer. Don't get a schnauzer. You go, come on.
They're yappers.
Anyway, that's a different story.
It's a yapper.
But my cardiologist, I just met my cardiologist. I gave her an example of what I was doing. I said I walk 3 to 4 miles a day. I said, but I need to work on my, cardio. She said, well, that should be more than enough. Then she looked at me and said, no, I guess not for you. It's the person's lifestyle.
Right.
And I think that's the key. But I tell anyone, at least do 30 minutes. I mean, the experts say the same thing, at least 30 minutes. You start out gradually. If you notice, any athlete, they don't go out and immediately run out and do sprints and everything else. They gradually warm up. And that's what you have to do with your heart. Gradually work out. Because you start doing sudden things, that's a sudden shock. Think about it. If you stop your car suddenly, what happens? The same thing with your heart. So you need to work on it and be smart about it. Right. But anybody can do that. I have a friend that referees basketball. For him, sometimes he can't go out. He walks up and down the steps at least 10 to 12 times.
So the conversation that I've heard people ask is, how do you know that you've done enough to actually get your heart going? Is it just enough to break a sweat? Do you think that people who use some of the sort of Fitbits or devices to actually monitor your heart rate, what do you need? What's the feedback you need to know you're doing it right?
All that stuff is good, but as an old-timer that's been doing it, you will know through your body. Breathing hard, you'll feel your heart pumping more and more aggressive. I mean, Fitbits and all these other devices. I even have one on my phone that I use. But honestly, when you start, not necessarily breaking a sweat, because you can break a sweat and not really breathe hard.
But isn't it true, Henry, even with all that equipment, it comes down to making a commitment. I am going to set aside some time every day, find ways to
and
exercise.
It's making a commitment and knowing your body, because I think everyone's body is very different, and your limits are what's good for you might not be good for another person. So I would add to your advice, go visit your primary care physician. We often go only when we don't feel well, but we actually need to go when we are well, so we can establish a baseline and understand that.
30 seconds left.
Once a year, I do a physical exam, and that I'll know where I stand. That's just like if you went to check on your car, just check your car to make sure it's running for. The same thing with your body. Once a year, check on that. As you get older, people don't realize you lose muscle.
And I think it's really important to also reiterate that the signs of heart attack are different in men and women often don't notice, and people need to be really careful.
Leading cause of death in women.
Yes, exactly. So it's very important to be active. Be active smart, okay? Be active smart, that's what I say.
And be in touch with your doctor, be in touch with
absolutely.
And clean living.
If you're gonna increase your activity, make sure that you're capable of doing it. That's the key.
And recognize that a former NFL player has different needs than perhaps the rest of us in this world. And thank goodness this old NFL player is still with us. Thanks, Henry Hailstock. I want to thank all of you for joining me today. This has been a great discussion on a lot of very, very important topics. And I want to thank all of you in the viewing audience for joining us for this week's edition of Montgomery Weekend Review. I'm Don Mooers, inviting you to join us next week at this very same time.
Great.